Vamos mergulhar no romantismo, não aquele tipo de filme açucarado, mas uma revolução artística radical. O romantismo foi uma rebelião contra as regras estritas e lógicas do iluminismo, substituindo a razão pela emoção pura. Ele explodiu na Europa do final do século XVIII, impulsionado pelo caos como a Revolução Francesa e a industrialização. Artistas e escritores rejeitaram fórmulas antigas, buscando capturar os cantos selvagens da alma humana, sonhos, pesadelos, paixões. Quando o romantismo chegou ao Brasil, ganhou um sabor único. O Brasil, recém-independente em 1822, buscava sua identidade. Artistas românticos pintaram a natureza exuberante do Brasil, os povos indígenas e a mistura cultural como o coração de uma nova história nacional. O romantismo não era apenas sobre arte, era sobre redefinir o que significava ser humano, valorizando a imaginação, a individualidade e a beleza da imperfeição. É por isso que torcemos por heróis imperfeitos e sentimos admiração em pores do sol dramáticos. O romantismo é uma jornada para o que nos faz sentir vivos. O que impulsionou o romantismo? Primeiro, um foco no individualismo. Seus sentimentos e imaginação importavam mais. A arte se tornou pessoal, cheia de heróis apaixonados e imperfeitos. A natureza foi glorificada, não apenas como cenário, mas como uma força viva que refletia a emoção humana. O sublime, a admiração e o terror da natureza, tornou-se central. Os românticos também idealizavam o passado, especialmente a Idade Média, mas no Brasil, isso virou o indianismo, heróis indígenas como símbolos nacionais. Essas figuras não eram realistas, mas míticas, representando um espírito brasileiro puro. O escapismo e a insatisfação com a realidade alimentaram uma arte sombria e melancólica. Amor não correspondido, solidão e o mal do século. Os românticos acreditavam que a verdadeira realização estava fora de alcance, tornando sua arte dramática e profundamente emocional. Essa visão de mundo impulsionou o movimento, explorando os extremos da experiência humana. O romantismo foi uma revolução de sentimentos. Para entender o romantismo, a gente tem que ver contra o que ele se rebelou, a obsessão do iluminismo pela razão e pela ordem. A vida nem sempre é lógica, e artistas na Alemanha e na Inglaterra queriam mais do que a fria racionalidade. As revoluções francesa e industrial sacudiram a sociedade, fazendo as velhas regras parecerem sem sentido. Os românticos se voltaram para a emoção e o poder do espírito individual. O movimento alemão Sturm und Drang, com Os Sofrimentos do Jovem Werther, de Goethe, ditou o tom, o herói sensível e fadado ao fracasso. A Werthermania varreu a Europa, mostrando o impacto real da arte. Na Inglaterra, Wordsworth e Coleridge encontraram divindade na natureza. Byron criou o soturno herói byroniano. Na França, Victor Hugo defendeu o homem comum. Por toda a Europa, o romantismo significou abraçar o selvagem, o misterioso e o pessoal. Essa revolução da alma logo chegou ao Brasil. Quando o romantismo chegou ao Brasil, ele teve que se adaptar. O Brasil, recém-independente, precisava de uma identidade nacional. O foco do romantismo no espírito, no folclore e na natureza era perfeito para essa missão. A estreia do movimento no Brasil veio com suspiros poéticos e saudades de Gonçalves de Magalhães em 1836, um manifesto para o sentimento local. Os escritores romperam com a tradição portuguesa, buscando uma voz verdadeiramente brasileira. Eles reimaginaram o indígena brasileiro como o herói nacional, o bom selvagem, puro, bravo e profundamente conectado à terra. Esse indianismo criou um mito fundador único para o Brasil. A natureza também virou personagem. Para que sonhar com as colinas inglesas quando se tem a Amazônia? A primeira onda do romantismo brasileiro foi definida pelo nacionalismo, heróis indígenas e a celebração da beleza natural do Brasil. Foi um projeto apaixonado para dar ao Brasil sua própria cara e voz. With independence, Brazil's writers faced a challenge: inventing a national identity. The first romantic generation became mythmakers, not historians. Lacking medieval knights, they elevated the indigenous Indio to heroic status. A Brazilian Achilles, the Indio symbolized purity, strength, and a deep bond with the land. This was a political move, claiming Brazil's soul as uniquely its own. Gonçalves Dias led the way. His poem, Canção do Exílio, became a national anthem of longing and pride. His epics, like Ai Juca Pirama, featured idealized indigenous heroes facing destiny with honor. These writers built a new mythology, celebrating local legends, history, and character. The first wave of Romanticism was optimistic and patriotic, giving Brazil a story to tell the world. It painted an ideal Brazil, majestic, powerful, and ready for its place on the world stage. Se o herói indígena era a estrela do show para a primeira geração, então a paisagem brasileira era o cenário épico onde toda a ação acontecia. E que cenário! Esses escritores não apenas descreviam a natureza, eles a cultuavam. Eles olhavam para a beleza imensa e indomável do Brasil. A vasta floresta amazônica, os rios caudalosos, a costa infinita, a fauna e flora vibrantes, e a viam como a expressão máxima da alma da nação. Para eles, a natureza não era apenas um pano de fundo, era um personagem vivo e pulsante, poderoso, majestoso e uma fonte de imenso orgulho nacional. Era a manifestação física da grandeza do Brasil, um presente divino que o diferenciava de qualquer outro país na Terra. Esta não era a natureza calma e contemplativa que você poderia encontrar na poesia romântica europeia. Isso era a natureza turbinada, como um motor V8. A natureza brasileira era descrita como exuberante, grandiosa e muitas vezes avassaladora, espelhando as emoções apaixonadas dos heróis que a habitavam. Uma cachoeira furiosa poderia refletir a fúria de um guerreiro, enquanto uma noite serena de luar na floresta poderia ser o cenário para uma trágica história de amor. Os escritores usavam a natureza para amplificar tudo. A escala da paisagem, as árvores gigantes, os rios vastos, era usada para enfatizar a escala da coragem dos heróis e a profundidade de seus sentimentos. Isso criou uma literatura visualmente deslumbrante e emocionalmente potente, uma visão verdadeiramente tropical do ideal romântico. Essa deificação do mundo natural também era um ato político. Ao celebrar o ambiente brasileiro único, esses escritores estavam reforçando a ideia de excepcionalidade nacional. Eles estavam essencialmente dizendo: olhem para a nossa terra. A Europa não tem nada parecido. As palmeiras, o sabiá, a vitória régia. Estes não eram apenas plantas e animais, eram símbolos nacionais, ícones de uma identidade única. Esse foco na paisagem local ajudou a criar um senso compartilhado de lugar e pertencimento para as pessoas de uma nação jovem, diversa e geograficamente imensa. Era uma forma de dizer que, não importa onde você estivesse no Brasil, você fazia parte dessa herança natural grandiosa, bela e selvagem. No fim das contas, a primeira geração de românticos apresentou uma visão do Brasil que era uma trindade perfeita e idealizada: o bravo herói indígena, o magnífico mundo natural e um poderoso senso de orgulho nacional. Era um belo sonho, um retrato de uma nação cheia de potencial e promessas. Essa visão era, claro, uma fantasia. Ela ignorava as realidades brutais da escravidão, a destruição sistemática das culturas indígenas e as profundas desigualdades sociais da época. Mas seu propósito não era ser um documentário. Seu propósito era inspirar, era dar a uma nova nação um passado heróico e uma identidade gloriosa, um alicerce sobre o qual a complexa história do Brasil continuaria a ser construída pelas gerações seguintes. The first generation of Brazilian romantics was bright and sunny. The second generation was the dark, stormy night that followed. The optimism was gone, replaced by gloom. This gave this phase its famous nickname, the geração mal do século, or the sickness of the century generation. These writers, mostly young university students, turned their gaze inward, no longer interested in building a nation. Instead, they explored the darkest corners of the individual soul. Doubt, disillusionment, melancholy, and the feeling that life was meaningless. It was as if the national party was over, and everyone was left with an existential hangover. This pessimism was inspired by the English poet Lord Byron. His Byronic hero became the role model for these young Brazilian poets. They embraced the lifestyle of the tortured artist. Their poetry became a stage for their own personal dramas, filled with angst and weariness. They felt alienated and out of place. This wasn't just poetry, it was a performance of despair. Part of it was the natural pendulum swing of literary movements. The heroic project of the first generation felt naive. The political promises of Brazil's independence hadn't materialized. Their immediate reality was one of personal struggles and the shadow of mortality. This manifested as escapism. Since reality was a source of pain, the only refuge was in dreams and death. Their poetry is drenched in themes of nocturnal wanderings and cemeteries. They romanticized death as a beautiful release. This generation traded sun-drenched forests for moonlit graveyards, finding beauty only in decay and solace only in oblivion. Álvares de Azevedo was the quintessential poet of the mal do século. He died young, cementing his legacy as a tragic genius. His work encapsulates the second generation's obsessions. His book showcases the duality of the romantic soul. One side is filled with gentle poems of platonic love, while the other dives into irony, horror, and a morbid obsession with death. Azevedo's poetry is a roller coaster of teenage angst. Love, for these poets, was almost always a source of suffering, typically distant and unrequited. The beloved woman was often an ethereal figure, a dream that could never be touched. The physical side of love was often sublimated into a morbid fascination with the female corpse. The only way to truly unite with the beloved was in death. Other poets, like Casimiro de Abreu and Junqueira Freire, explored similar themes. Casimiro de Abreu is known for his nostalgia for childhood. Junqueira Freire, who was a monk, channeled his spiritual crises into his verses. Ultimately, the second generation of Brazilian Romanticism was a fleeting moment of intense subjectivity. They rejected the external world in favor of the internal world of the tormented soul. The mal do século poets looked into a tavern glass or a moonlit grave and saw a reflection of their own despair. It was a necessary phase that explored the dark underbelly of the romantic spirit. The third generation of Brazilian romantic poets moved away from the self-absorbed themes of the past. This phase is known as the geração condoreira, or the Condor generation. These poets wanted a broad, panoramic perspective. They fixed their gaze on the great social and political issues of their time. The poetry became a tool for social change, and its primary target was the greatest injustice in Brazilian society: slavery. The 1870s and 1880s were a period of intense political ferment. The new generation of writers felt a moral duty to use their talent to speak for the voiceless and fight for justice. They were activists, orators, and public figures who used their words to rally the people. The language became grand, loud, and declamatory, designed to be read aloud. It was poetry as a public speech, full of righteous anger and passionate appeals to liberty, equality, and human dignity. The focus shifted from the I of the suffering poet to the we of a nation struggling with its conscience. This generation represents a crucial bridge between Romanticism and realism. They were tackling concrete social problems, describing the brutal reality of slavery, and advocating for specific political changes, anchoring it firmly in the messy, complex reality of 19th century Brazil. The third generation opened the door for literature to become a mirror of society. Castro Alves, the ultimate poeta dos escravos, embodied social and political engagement more than any other writer. He was a brilliant orator and passionate poet. His work was a thunderous denunciation of the horrors of slavery, dragging it into the light for all to see. His most famous work is one of the most powerful poems in Brazilian literature. It's an epic depiction of the transatlantic slave trade, forcing readers to witness the horror. Castro Alves challenged the conscience of a nation numb to slavery. Unlike the ultra-romantics, his love poetry is sensual, physical, and full of life. Love is celebrated as a source of vitality and joy. Tragically, Castro Alves died young, but his impact was immense. He redefined the poet's role, proving art could drive social change, channeling romanticism into a humanitarian cause. Remembered as a national hero, he fought for freedom with his words. While poets explored national identity, another development was taking place: the rise of the novel. Prose fiction became a canvas where writers could explore the complexities of Brazilian society. This was the era when the Brazilian novel was truly born, becoming a serious art form. These novelists took the core themes of romanticism, nationalism, love, heroism, and social critique, and spun them into narratives that captivated a growing reading public. The undisputed king of the romantic novel was José de Alencar, a one-man industry for creating a Brazilian national narrative. He made it his life's mission to photograph Brazil in all its diversity. He wrote Indianist novels, like Andi, prose equivalents of epic poems, creating unforgettable indigenous heroes and heroines. Alencar also pioneered the urban novel, setting his stories in the complex social world of the imperial court in Rio de Janeiro. Through his immense body of work, Alencar essentially created a literary map of Brazil, solidifying the novel's place as a central pillar of the country's culture. While José de Alencar built his literary empire, other writers expanded the scope of the Brazilian novel. The regionalist novel emerged, focusing on specific cultures and ways of life in Brazil's interior. These writers looked to the backlands, the pampas, and rural communities, documenting Brazil's far from the capital. Franklin Tavora championed a literature of the North, arguing that Brazil's spirit was in the Northeast. This acknowledged Brazil's diversity, resisting a single national identity centered on Rio de Janeiro. Manuel Antonio de Almeida's, published in installments, was a true original. A hilarious story set in Rio de Janeiro, it focused on common people. Unlike Alencar's novels, its protagonist, Leonardo, is a lovable rogue, the opposite of a romantic hero. The book is celebrated for its anti-romantic tone and depiction of everyday life. Many critics see it as a precursor to realism. It showed that the Brazilian novel could be funny and critical, representing the comical reality of ordinary Brazilian life. So, after this wild journey, what's the big takeaway? Why should we care about dramatic 19th century writers? Romanticism wasn't just a literary movement. It was the operating system that Brazil's cultural identity was built on. It was the first major artistic movement that tried to answer the question, what does it mean to be Brazilian? It created the myths, heroes, and conflicts that have echoed through Brazilian culture ever since. It was a massive, nation-building project that gave the country its first real literary voice. The impact of this movement is absolutely everywhere. The way Brazil imagines its own nature as a source of national pride and almost spiritual power, that's a direct inheritance from the Romantics. Even the passionate, larger-than-life drama of our beloved telenovelas is tapping into a vein of storytelling that the Romantics perfected. This is the bedrock of so much of our modern culture. Castro Alves's fight for social justice created a powerful legacy for activist art that continues to inspire artists and movements in Brazil today. In the end, studying Romanticism might be old, and it might be buried, but it's what holds everything up. It was a chaotic, contradictory era that defined the soul of a nation.